I'll be surprised if you can't hear the crickets or the whatever. Maybe they're the frogs that hang out at our pond. There's a lot of noise in the air tonight. I think they are the frogs, actually. What do they call them? Well, at any rate, it's a good, healthy sound. The last of our videos, in the absence of my Mr. Producer, who, as you heard, is on his way to Mount Kilimanjaro, going to hike that, what is it, 19, 20,000 foot mountain with some friends. And we did have to decline to use our Jordan Peterson piece. I'm still going to try to do that, but I wasn't happy with several things about it, and I still haven't got permission from them to use segments out of their video. So, having said that, I dug around. I should say, that being the case, I dug around and asked some of my former students what they were thinking about these days, and I got this one from Sue. She said, "I've been thinking about color and color relationships, especially in plein air painting." That's a good thing. Color and color relationships and outdoors. She loves landscape. Background colors in the outdoors often look gray-green and not appealing. That's a very interesting question point there. I'm going to come back through this. I'll read the whole thing. I copied a Munsell color wheel to give me ideas. Then I went to Hillstead Museum, which is a nice museum in Connecticut with some really nice Impressionist work. There's quite a few of those kinds of places in New England. And saw an early Monet. I think it's down around Fairfield, Connecticut. Then I went to Hillstead Museum and saw an early Monet. Lovely painting of boats on a body of water. But his color palette was recognizable and beautiful. Suggestions. So I have a lot of questions before I can give you suggestions, but I'll throw some things at you, and then I'll look at pictures with you together with you. But background colors, I mean, first of all, everything's relational, right? I've been thinking about color and color relationships. I hope you have if you're painting outdoors. If you're an Impressionist, that is to say, if you're not, don't have another agenda of sorts, and you're going to see that in us here, who has a little bit different agenda. Background colors in the outdoors often look gray-green and not appealing. Now, this is an interesting question about what's appealing, and do each of our colors have to be, as it were, appealing? Some colors, whatever colors are doing, they're part of an ensemble. And what has to happen is that the general beauty of that ensemble is what we're after. We're not trying to understand what colors happen in the background. We're not trying to have a class of colors that we know to use where. That might be something other people are doing, but if you're an Impressionist, you're actually open to whatever today is offering, and today's context will change everything. That same gray-green in the background of a overly rich picture, a picture that just basically presents it as really rich in chroma, will have a different value from one that's generally more muted, like a cool day. So cool meaning cloudy day. So when she said I copied a Munsell color wheel to give me ideas, I don't know what you mean by that, because the Munsell color wheel is just basically giving you this idea of the primary colors and the secondary colors, and then when you get toward the end of your thing, you're saying recognizable colors. Well, those are the 6 recognizable colors. So I hope you've done that before, actually, tried to just get to know how Munsell talks and thinks about color. It's a very useful thing for us. But then she said, I went to the Hillstead Museum and saw an early Monet, lovely painting of boats on a body of water. But his color palette was recognizable and beautiful. Suggestions. Now, presumably this is a question of muddiness or a failure of chroma, if not, as it were, purity of color. So let's just look at pictures and see if we can talk about a couple of the points inside. First of all, I want to introduce you who don't know Innes out there. I know that most of you do by this time know George Innes. I'm sticking with American painters. I'm going to be talking about Monet and 2 American painters. Monet and Metcalf, Willard Metcalf was a New England painter, or in our area, and George Innes, who is upstate New York, more or less, somewhere between the camp of the Hudson River School guys and and the tonalists. But you should be able to see plainly the difference in the way of addressing. You can see that Monet is everything that Monet is doing is an exploration of the color of that moment. So he's a student of the color of that day. With Innes, you always get the feeling what he's doing is trying to create a mood, a sensation of some sort. And he will do, as he would say, whatever it takes. I think he said I'd use mud if it would get the effect I wanted. But he would do whatever it takes to get the effect he wants. Wants for what, right? And so then we also know that Innes, according to his son, would go out in nature and paint pictures, and then go indoors and do stuff to them, turn them into art. As that was his approach. And whereas Monet's approach was actually to try to get it all, whether he did it consistently or not, was to be on the spot as much as possible, and to try to get the unity of the visual impression per se, for its own sake. But what you're going to see in the Monet approach is this search through with red, yellow, and blue, as it were. And it just means with significant strength of recognizable colors. Red, yellow, and blue is a great place to start. And the search for the color relations. And that includes the chromal relations, the intensity portions of those things. But this is the way I recommend, Monet is the way I recommend everybody get started thinking about color outdoors. Instead of trying to make art, try to hit notes, try to get the set of the relationships out there. I mean, in all sincerity, just instead of trying to make art, do that. Rick, I got your message there, your one about how to avoid thinking of things as objects. But I think the part of the answer to that is you have to think about things as a color field and let yourself just be. That's the one thing that you won't be happy with if you go home today and not have got the color relations beautifully. And that'll just gradually teach you how to, increase intensities and where you need them. And most of what you see in people like even Soroyas, you'll see where their neutral notes are is they're made out of very, very apparent colors. As I said, when I do a demonstration, I'm trying to say, don't you see that's a red gray, this is a blue gray, that's a yellow gray. You have to see those colors in their color qualities, right? And when you try to improve this, say this gray, this particular gray that's a little too warm and needs some purplish notes in it, you set that beautiful purple in there and integrate it rather than trying to change the color note. And that whole process keeps you with a more live color. That's the woven live color idea. And if you weave red, yellows, and blues together, you're not going to wind up with red, yellow, and blue. You're going to wind up with a different color, which you're going to have to learn to manage, right? Whatever that different color is. Might be those gray greens in the background you're talking about soon. There's some chance I don't fully, there's definitely a part of this I don't fully grasp. So you feel free to just, I should say, I hope you're comfortable with me just having a nice time using it as a takeoff point. So here's George Innes again. Both these being dark areas, the pictured areas in the shadows. This one by Willard Metcalf. And if you can see them, and this is where one of you would like me to have blown them up big, I appreciate that. Maybe I should have this one. But if you can get your face into this, you'll see this search goes on with Metcalf. He's in the search for the red, yellow, and blue. He looks like he's much more like Monet looking for the color field. And just more with all humility, addressing the relationships of those things. And when he gets them, that's going to be happy for him. Now, I'm not going to really tell you that's who Metcalf is. That's who Monet is. But, and that's not even entirely who Monet is. There are elements of design that come into play in ways that aren't part of this discussion. But what you're seeing with Innes is a much more of a tonalist mentality of large masses of fairly simplified colors with color movements in them if they have it and that sort of thing. But it isn't a search for the simple beauty of nature. It's a thing about making pictures, and especially to have some sort of what you might call a poetic content. I'm saying by sensation, by feeling, a felt content. So here's two much the same, Innes and Monet, the same problem basically. Monet was frequently painting backlight. And this one has some combination. This is in the shadows here, however that happened, and some parts of this are in the sunlight. But this portion of it, which is in this backlight, you can see him hunting through the colors. The red, yellow, and blue is all over the place in that area. This is not the same search down here, is it? So this would be, you think of this more as a values-based model, more of the word tonalist simply applies, right? It's a little more the early background of Sargent, shall we say? But the search for the colors, and especially that search. Now here's, by the way, a very, very amusing design. That search for the colors, though, and the just the pleasure and the satisfaction he's getting out of finding the beauty of that, the mystery of that relationship that makes that thing happen is far more what turns this guy on than Innes, again, who's making a picture in a sense to tell a story, but whatever you want to call that, mood creation and stuff. So you interpret Innes the way you like, but I'm trying to just simply show you that when this happens, you're not going to be, there's going to be some element of some colors back in the middle ground here that you're going to use. Maybe you'll use them repeatedly if you're painting indoors a lot, away from your subject. But out here, this guy is getting these rich notes there to do what they do in relation to these other notes in a, what you might call a consistent and a discipline. Simply a search for the color relations is the entire problem of it's in it. So it's of the scene in front of him, the classic impression. Innes is not an impressionist, and everybody knows he's a tonalist, but that's whatever that means, right? So again, sort of similar evening light now, not clearly not from the same direction. And again, though, you can see the whole spectrum, the life in these colors. It's not that there isn't life, for example, in these reds and through here, and these passages and through here, and some passages of green that have more richness and all that sort of thing. But I'm just pointing out to you that it's a different goal. And when you're a guy like Monet, and I'll show you even more in Metcalf, when you see a thing like this happening, you're not going to be happy with making it look like a haystack in the foreground by making it warm or something. You're going to hit this. You're going to keep pursuing this note while you're watching this one, and you're going to be finding yourself making it bluer and bluer and bluer and bluer. And you're going to make it different from this note down here and this note down here. That's your search, right? And the only way you can accomplish this is if you have capacity to get out of naming the color and just keep adjusting the things toward more chroma, more red, yellow, blue, in relation, in relation, in relation, in relation. So, and that's the secret to everything you're asking, how can you improve your color? So, by the way, instead of copying Munzel, I would recommend you copy Monet. So find a Monet and just copy him honestly. Copy it from one end to the other, but find one that's really beautiful in its bigness, like that haystack there. Boston's got some very nice ones. These two I'm showing you these because they're examples of Metcalf's work, and this is on the water. And these are the kinds of things where in the distance, most people will miss the amazing redness of the shoreline. It's just squeaking out, it's like bleeding red. And but whatever else happens, the relative colors of all these neutrals out here, they're all different in value, different in color. And your job is to play that game of just relating as you see things that are like grays. These are far obviously more purpley and more rich than the ones back here, and so on. And it's your game. It's that same game. This one here looks a little bit more Monet-like in his hunt, doesn't it? As he's pursuing the marks, an oblong of pink here, a rectangle of blue there, in that other discipline that Monet does. And then there's this one, and I think that might be, no, it's not our last one, good. So these are all outdoors, sunlight, and they all appear to be relatively front lit, which is not the norm for Innes. But again, I love this guy's work, and I'm not even slightly trying to put him down. And there are things even about Monet that I don't prefer. So I'm not here to do that. I'm here to talk about, for example, when you see a rich note in the background, don't make it that you've made decisions already. Just hit the note and get it right to the other note, to the other blues in the neighborhood, to the darkest ones. Just get this to this to this to this to this, and before you know it, your note will be doing what it needs to be doing, what the picture needs for it to be doing. But that's true even of anybody painting. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're not in this as a colorist. Your color relations really need to be pretty good, even if they're not searched out in this every spot having its own piece of color, and rather than being more broadly laid out the way he's doing it, the way Innes is doing it. But yeah, no, I don't about Innes and Monet. I mean, what's not to love? So don't be taking that away from this, that I'm actually not a friend of Innes. I've been a long, one of my early loves was George Innes. When I was a student in New York, he was early on, he was there. Actually, before Monet, before I even saw Monet. I mean, I knew Monet was there, I just didn't pay any attention to him. Again, what you can see is a Metcalf over here, but a Monet and an Innes. And again, what you can see is that need to take the area back here to find the note that's really there. Don't paint some note that you remember from a different picture. I don't know. I don't even want to know what tends to happen in the backgrounds of pictures because I'll be tempted to not be relational, be true in relation in this picture to the notes in this picture, which has its own intrinsic and magical unity that you must be pursuing. So the magic of this blue as it plays to this blue or any movements of these blues all to each other, that whole thing is that game. And it's a color dream. It's a color search. This is a picture maker's mindset. And it's just a different one. And I well, I don't say more, but the idea of creating a sense of mystery, a sense of that's one of his things. It's very evident in a lot of his work. And it's just trying to create a sense of mystery. He does it with glazes of and creates hazes and things like that. There's a lot of ways of doing it, but he does want to create that. I think that he would talk about it as some sort of a spiritual sense, trying to spiritualize a world. But he does manage to get it into the world of feeling. So whether that's spiritualized or not, I don't know. Actually, all good painting, all truth actually gives me a feeling. But so here's the Monet, and again, wherever you look, don't expect or anticipate anything. Just see the notes, hit the notes, and hit them right, and then adjust them in comparison. I'm pointing at these because these are all three darks. This is a dark, and these darks, and you're hitting the notes, the lights, the most brilliant, projected one, the other lights, and the variations in their colors. And the other, when I say the other lights, I do mean the white lights, as it were. And it's just it's the hunt. Yeah. So if there's movements in the clouds from pinker to lighter or from pinker to blue or any of those things, anything you see, movements of color, greens traveling, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, this whole discussion just boils down to one thing though, Sue, and that is, you said it right at the beginning. You're out there trying to be relational. Trust the relationships to deliver that note. And if it's just a question of not being able to hit it fresh enough, make sure you look down at your palette. If the note doesn't look fresh on your palette, it's not going to look fresh when it hits on the canvas, okay? And whatever you do on that, whatever you put up there, if it's not good, that little mark is still on your palette. Go down there and right next to it, mix that richer note and try that one, okay? All right. That's my best recommendation for today. And this has to have been a little bit of a hit and run, but thank you for sending that query in to me, Sue. And of course, you and I can talk in person anytime. So, all right. So that'll be it for today. And thank you all for your donations, for your sharing, subscribing, and comments and all that stuff. Keep them coming. And what's interesting to you? It's, of course, if you look at my top 5 videos, Boston School ones, you have some idea where I'm coming from, and maybe something in all that conversation, or as you listen to some of these things, will evoke some idea in you, maybe curiosity even about what we're doing. Anything you want to talk about that goes in this direction. I'm not trying to be all things to all people. I'm not that great art historian. I'm not the guy who pretends to comprehend all different ways of painting. I'm really an authority on my own way of painting, as they say. And a huge bit of it, though, has the connections I've talked about in my evolution series. The evolution of Impressionism, the Boston School, the evolution of Impressionism. And so it's Velázquez, we did Vermeer, we did Chardin, we did Sargent, and we did Monet, all of which are in some way trying to provide understanding of who the Boston School is. Okay, and those are their own favorite guys, so to speak, except for Sargent, who was contemporary and probably a bit of a challenge for them. All right. So, all right, next time, wishing you well, Mr. Producer, and hope things go great out there on the mountain. All right, see you next time.